The sun rose over Lagos, casting a golden hue on the bustling streets of the city. The sound of honking cars and street vendors shouting filled the air, blending into a vibrant symphony that characterized the city. Amara stood at her kitchen window, watching the world wake up as she prepared breakfast for her husband, Emeka, and their two children. Amara was the epitome of a devoted wife. Her days revolved around her family, ensuring her children were fed and dressed for school, while juggling her part-time job at a local clinic. Her love for Emeka ran deep, rooted in years of shared dreams and challenges. They had built a life together, filled with laughter, but lately, something felt off. In contrast, Chidera stepped out of her small apartment, adjusting her designer handbag and checking her reflection in the glass door. At 25, she was a woman on a mission, determined to carve out a name for herself in the competitive world of Lagos business elite. She had met Emeka at a networking event, where he had charmed her with his charisma and confidence. Their relationship started innocently enough. Few exchanged glances and smiles that lingered too long. Chidera found herself drawn to Emeka's success and the life he represented, unaware of the intricate web of love and loyalty he had woven with Amara. The thrill of their connection ignited a spark in her, one that would soon spiral into an affair. Meanwhile, Amara busied herself with family matters, unaware of the storm brewing just outside her door. The vibrant life of Lagos, with its colorful markets and bustling streets, served as the backdrop for her seemingly perfect existence. Little did she know, the very foundation of her family was about to be shaken to its core. Emeka walked into the kitchen, his tie slightly loose and his phone buzzing with notifications. He flashed a tired smile at Amara as he sat at the table, flipping through messages. "Morning, love. Anything important today?" Amara asked, serving him a plate of toast and eggs. Emeka paused for a second, staring at his phone before replying, "Just the usual. Meetings all day, and then I might have to meet some clients for drinks later." His voice was calm, but Amara noticed how distracted he seemed lately. His phone had become an extension of his hand, always buzzing, always pulling him away from their conversations. She gave him a small smile, trying to push away the unease building in her chest. "Don't work too hard. The kids have missed spending time with you," she said, helping to remind him of the family waiting for him at home. Emeka nodded absent-mindedly, his mind already elsewhere. He kissed her lightly on the cheek before leaving, his cologne lingering long after he was gone. As Emeka drove through the crowded streets of Lagos, his thoughts wandered to Chidera. The excitement he felt when he was with her was like nothing he had experienced in years. Chidera was bold, confident, and completely different from Amara. He knew what he was doing was wrong, but every time he tried to pull away, something kept pulling him back to her. At her office downtown, Chidera was in her element, holding meetings and negotiating deals with the sharpness of a seasoned businesswoman. Yet, even in the middle of her busy day, she couldn't stop thinking about Emeka. He was older, more experienced, and everything she thought she wanted in a man. But deep down, Chidera knew her role in his life. She was the other woman, the mistress. The affair had started after that first encounter at the networking event. Emeka had invited Chidera out for coffee, which turned into dinner, and before long, they were spending nights in expensive hotel rooms. What had begun as innocent flirting soon became a full-blown relationship, one that existed in the shadows, away from prying eyes. Chidera enjoyed the attention, the gifts, and the lifestyle that came with being involved with a man like Emeka. But the more time she spent with him, the more she found herself wanting something deeper. She fantasized about what it would be like if Emeka left his wife and made her the center of his world. Back at home, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Emeka had always been a busy man, but lately his absences had grown longer, and his explanations vaguer. She trusted him at least. She had for many years, but now doubt began to creep into her mind. She dismissed it, telling herself that it was just her imagination. That evening, after putting the kids to bed, Amara sat alone in the living room, waiting for Emeka to come home. It was past midnight, and she hadn't heard from him since the brief text he sent hours ago. Meeting ran late. Don't wait up. Her heart sank as she stared at the message. Something was definitely wrong. Meanwhile, Emeka was with Chidera in a quiet, dimly lit bar across town. They sat in a private booth, talking in low voices as if the world outside didn't exist. "You're always so tense," Chidera teased, reaching across the table to touch his hand. "You need to relax more when you're with me." Emeka smiled, though there was a hint of guilt behind it. "I know," he said, pulling his hand away gently. "But things are complicated." Chidera raised an eyebrow, sensing the shift in his tone. "You mean your wife," she said bluntly. Emeka glanced away, suddenly uncomfortable. Chidera had never been shy about addressing the elephant in the room, but tonight her words cut deeper. "You've never told me much about her," Chidera continued, her voice softer now. "But I can see she's still a big part of your life. Where do I fit into all this?" Emeka exhaled, leaning back in his seat. He didn't have an answer, at least not one that would satisfy her. The truth was, he cared about Amora. She was the mother of his children, his partner for over a decade. But Chidera represented something different: freedom, excitement, a chance to escape. Amora, on the other hand, was beginning to feel the weight of loneliness. She had always prided herself on being a strong, independent woman, but Emeka's growing distance was breaking her resolve. She had tried to ignore the late nights, the secretive phone calls, and the subtle changes in his behavior, but it was becoming harder to pretend that everything was okay. One weekend, Emeka had promised to spend time with the family, but at the last minute, he canceled, claiming he had urgent work to attend to. Amara had stood in the living room, holding their disappointed children in her arms, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. As she watched Emeka leave once again, she knew she had to confront him soon. Chidera, too, was growing restless. The thrill of being the mistress was wearing thin. She wanted more from Emeka, but every time she brought up the future, he became evasive. Deep down, she knew that men like him rarely left their wives, but she couldn't shake the fantasy that one day she would be the one he came home to. One afternoon, while cleaning the house, Amara found a receipt tucked in the pocket of Emeka's suit. It was for an expensive dinner at a restaurant she had never been to. The date matched a night when Emeka had told her he was working late. Her heart pounded in her chest as she held the slip of paper in her hand. That night, when Emeka came home, Amara confronted him. She stood in the doorway of their bedroom, holding the receipt. "What is this, Emeka?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. Emeka's face paled as he saw the evidence in her hand. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Amara's heart raced as she watched him struggle to explain. "Who is she?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The silence in the room was deafening as Emeka lowered his gaze, unable to meet her eyes. The truth hung in the air between them, heavy and suffocating. Amara felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "It's not what you think," Emeka finally said, his voice weak. But Amara shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "Don't lie to me," she said, her voice breaking. "I deserve the truth." Emeka exhaled, knowing there was no way to hide it anymore. He had been caught, and the consequences of his actions were finally coming to light. "I'm sorry, Amara," he said softly. "I never wanted to hurt you." But the words felt hollow, and Amara could feel her heart shattering. She turned away from him, unable to bear the sight of the man she had loved for so long standing before her as a stranger. The days that followed were a blur for Amara. She moved through life in a haze, trying to hold herself together for the sake of her children. Emeka had apologized, pleaded with her to forgive him, but the betrayal cut too deep. Amara couldn't shake the image of him with another woman, a woman who had stolen the life they had built together. Chidera, on the other hand, was beginning to see the cracks in her relationship with Emeka. he had become more distant, more cautious, and she could feel him slipping away. She hadn't anticipated how messy things would get, but now she was caught in a web of her own making. One afternoon, as Chidera was shopping in the bustling market, she spotted a familiar figure out of the corner of her eye. It was Amara, the wife, the woman she had heard about but never met. Chidera froze, her heart pounding as she watched Amara move through the market, holding a basket in one hand and talking to a vendor. She looked so normal, so composed, and yet Chidera knew she was the very person who stood between her and the life she dreamed of. For a moment, Chidera thought about approaching her, but something held her back. What would she even say? Amara, unaware of Chidra's presence, haggled with the vendor, trying to distract herself from the turmoil in her heart. Shopping for her family was one of the few things that still brought her a sense of normalcy. As she paid for the vegetables, she felt a strange sensation, as if someone was watching her. She looked around but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Chidera turned quickly and walked away, her mind racing. Seeing Amara in person had shaken her. This was no longer a distant figure. She was real, and Chidera was the one intruding on her life. For the first time, Chidera began to question her role in all of this. Was she truly prepared to be the reason another woman's life fell apart? Later that night, Emeka visited Chidra's apartment. He was quieter than usual, distracted. Chidera could sense the tension between them growing. "You seem off," she said, pouring him a glass of wine. "Is everything okay?" Emeka sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Things have been rough at home," he admitted, his voice heavy with guilt. Chidera hesitated before asking, "Does she know?" Emeka nodded slowly, the weight of his admission sinking in. "She found out," he said, staring at the floor. "I don't know how, but she confronted me. I've hurt her badly, Chidera. I don't know if I can fix it." Chidra's stomach turned. She had known this moment would come, but hearing it made everything feel more real. "So, what happens now?" Chidera asked, her voice small. Emeka looked at her, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "I don't know," he said. "I love my family. I love my kids. But I also can't deny what we have." The words hung in the air between them, creating a divide that neither could bridge. Chidera suddenly felt foolish. She had been living in a fantasy, and now reality was crashing down around her. Amara, back at home, lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Emeka had come home late again, but this time, she didn't ask where he had been. She already knew. The silence between them had grown, and every moment felt like an eternity. She wondered how long she could live like this, pretending everything was fine for the sake of their children. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in the household became unbearable. Amara tried to focus on her children, but every time she looked at Emeka, all she could see was the betrayal. She began to consider her options, whether to stay and fight for her marriage, or walk away with her dignity intact. Meanwhile, Chidera was facing her own internal struggle. She had always prided herself on her independence, but her relationship with Emeka had made her feel vulnerable in ways she hadn't expected. She had thought she could handle being the other woman, but the reality was much more complicated. She didn't want to be someone's secret anymore. One evening, as Emeka was driving home from Chidra's apartment, he received a text message from her. "We need to talk. Emeka pulled over to read the message, his heart sinking. He had known this conversation was coming, but he wasn't ready for it. He texted back, "Okay, I'll come by tomorrow." The next day, Chidera sat in her living room, waiting for Emeka. When he arrived, she could see the exhaustion on his face. "We need to end this," she said before he could even sit down. Emeka blinked, caught off guard. "Chidera, he started, but she held up her hand. "No, Emeka, I've been thinking about this for a while. It's not healthy. For you, for me, or for your family." Emeka sat down, running his hands over his face. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," he said quietly. I didn't plan for this to happen. Chidera gave him a sad smile. I know, she said, but we both know it can't go on. You need to focus on fixing things at home. I can't be a part of this anymore. The breakup was surprisingly calm, with no shouting or accusations, just the sad understanding that their affair had run its course. As Emeka left her apartment for the last time, Chidera felt a strange sense of relief. She had finally taken control of her life, even if it meant letting go of someone she had grown to care about. Back at home, Amora had made a decision. She couldn't live in limbo any longer. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, she sat down with Emeka in the living room. "We need to talk," she said, echoing the words Chidera had used with him just days before. Emeka looked at her, his heart heavy with dread. "I can't do this anymore, Emeka," Amara said, her voice steady but filled with pain. "I've been trying to hold on for the kids, for us, but it's breaking me. I need to know where we stand. Are you willing to fix this, or are we done?" Emeka swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his choices pressing down on him. "I want to fix this," he said, his voice cracking. "I know I've hurt you, Amara, and I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I love you. I love our family, and I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." Amara looked at him, her heart aching. She wanted to believe him, but the wounds were still fresh. "It's not that simple," she said softly. "It will take time." For the first time in months, they talked honestly, laying everything out on the table: the affair, the hurt, the broken trust. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was a start. Emeka knew he had a long road ahead to earn back Amara's trust, but he was willing to do the work. He wasn't sure if their marriage would survive, but for the first time, they were both willing to try. In the weeks that followed, Amara and Emeka attended counseling, slowly rebuilding the foundation of their relationship. It wasn't perfect, and there were days when Amara wondered if she would ever truly forgive him. But for the sake of their children and the life they had built, she was willing to see where the journey would take them. Chidera, meanwhile, threw herself into her work, determined to move forward without looking back. She had learned a hard lesson about love and the dangers of living in someone else's shadow. Now she was focused on her own dreams, building a life that didn't rely on anyone but herself. As the months passed, the pain began to fade, replaced by a sense of resilience. Amara found strength in her community, her friends, and most importantly, in herself. She had faced heartbreak and betrayal, but she had survived. And in that survival, she found a new sense of purpose. For Emeka, the affair had been a wake-up call. He had nearly lost everything that mattered to him, and the regret he carried would stay with him for a long time. But he was determined to be a better husband, a better father, and a better man. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to rebuild what he had almost destroyed. In the end, both Amara and Chidera emerged from the chaos stronger than before. Their paths had crossed in ways neither had anticipated, but each had found their own way forward. Amara, with her family by her side, and Chidera, with a newfound sense of independence. Both women learned that even in the face of betrayal, there was life and always the chance for a new beginning. We have come to the end of this story. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel so as to watch more episodes, and also turn on the notification bell so as to be alerted when I post a new video. Kindly like, share, and drop your comments in the comment section. Until next time, remain blessed.